All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of Rocket Lab Weekly. This is episode 39. We are coming up to episode 52, which would be 1 year straight of doing Rocket Lab Weekly every week. So this week we have Matt from Medi Capital with us and Scotto from Scotto Capital. No, we don't have such a thing, I guess. So hello guys, thank you so much for being here. How has your week been?
Where's the hot fire? No, I'm just kidding. Bad joke. I just saw the thumbnail. I had no idea that it was called that. But no, week's been good for me. Just liking the video content coming out around Archimedes, and hopefully we can see something before earnings. All I care about is this before earnings. I don't necessarily need it to be this weekend or anything like that. But yeah.
Similar boat as well. It's not great without the Archimedes hot fire, but all in all, pretty decent week.
Yeah, I think Rocket Lab has been, I don't know about you guys, like my spirits are lifted when my stocks are higher, and it's very nice to not have Rocket Lab in the threes. I mean, it could be higher than it is now, but it's still very nice to have it in this range.
It is still a rocket company at the end of the day, so I do try to keep my. Well, it's not just a rocket company, but you guys know what I mean. It's a space company, right? So the volatility of it still in its infancy. So you're not fully established as of yet. So I feel like it's going to continue to be a rocky road until you kind of get a little bit more established and the total addressable market grows and there's a little bit more consistency. Not saying that Rocket Lab is inconsistent, but rather the whole industry really is inconsistent. You'll have months here, months there of delays, and I think until you kind of get a lot of that resolved and you have the ability to infill, if somebody pushes a launch or something like that, you can occupy that capacity. Whether it's from space systems or launches, you can occupy that capacity with another customer. I think it'll continue to be volatile until then.
Yeah, I think that's the fate of a space investor, like crazy volatility that seemingly doesn't make any sense, both up and down. And I thought many times about writing call options on my Rocket Lab position, but I just don't dare to do it because there's nothing stopping this stock from going to 8 in like 2 weeks, and there's nothing stopping it from going to 3 in the next 2 weeks. So it's just until profitability is there and institutions are more bought in, this volatility will be with us.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So this week, I think we have a lot to talk about. So we were promised a hot fire. I think it was first April, maybe it will go to May. And then first it was Q4 2023. And then we went to April, and then it will be like for sure in May. And then it went, Adam Spice said that it will be on the test and in May, and then maybe early June the tests are going to start, and we are literally done with Q2. There's no more trading days in Q2, and there's no hot fire. Before I get your guys' take, I just want to show that the photographer is in Stennis. At least he's posting about Stennis. Like, this guy is a bit funny because he posted, for example, like going somewhere with a fire, and then everybody was like, he's gonna film the hot fire test, and it ended up that he was just going on vacation. I did see that he was posting about Puerto Rico on the same day when he was posting this, so it could be that he's just posting earlier films, but maybe not. Then there was a LinkedIn post by a Rocket Lab communications manager who was saying the Archimedes engine is about to fire up. Then there is other multiple clues that we are very, very near. So I guess, how worried are you guys about this Archimedes delay? And do you think it's coming?
You want to start, Matt?
You can go ahead.
I'm not about to say worried, but like I think that it's to the point where even a few of the bulls are kind of starting to be like, hey, wait, what is happening? Like, as far as, I don't know if it's a disconnect in communication with management themselves, or just a lack of communication in the retail base. I'm not sure, but there seems to be a number of things that are starting to pile up that are maybe an orange flag, we'll call it. And like, of course, it's like a rocket program. Of course, it's going to be delayed. That's not the issue. It's the lack of communication that is a little bit confusing, you know?
Yeah,
I
Matt?
think, yeah, I mean, I feel like if anything really was delayed, we might not necessarily hear it, but I think if it was being taken off the test stand and a lot of the testing has already been concluded and they decided to not go forward with the hot fire test, I feel like we would already know. I feel like we would already have been kind of informed. We would know that the engine's been pulled off the test stand. So to me, I think it's more promising that it's still on the stand than it's not. But I could be wrong, right? I mean, who knows how close they're keeping some of this news to their chest. But I'm cautiously optimistic, and these guys, if anybody's going to do it appropriately, do it well, it's going to be these guys. So I'm still optimistic until I hear otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, just on Matt's point, there's this other clue. They tweeted about how the components. Okay, let me just read the tweet. It's too small for me on the screen here. With our first Archimedes engine on the test stand, parts of the next set of engines are rapidly coming off our 3D printing production line. So if there was such a big trouble with the Archimedes engine, would they be printing the parts for the next engines? And they have also said that there is 3 other engines produced, I think. So this must be to like the 4th and 5th Archimedes engine. This shows me that they're very, very confident in the design.
Yeah, but then there's the question of, if they're so confident, like, what's the holdup? I mean, it's kind of like, it's cool and all to see them working on multiple engines at the same time, but with all the delays that we're having, it's kind of leaves us wondering, like, is there something kind of crucial, like, wrong with this build? And if so, what's happening to all these engines that are being printed? Are these just scrap metal now, or like wasted potential? That's kind of, I don't know, another orange flag, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, you do raise a good point, because in many interviews, Peter Beck has said that the difference between them and SpaceX is that SpaceX does very rapid iteration on, like, as in terms of like blowing up engines and, blowing up rockets. And Rocket Lab likes to do more work in the design phase, and, they test components. And then when they do put something on the test stand, like, they do expect it to work. So that's like a difference between SpaceX and Rocket Lab. But one downside of this is that for Rocket Lab to 3D print the engines and, make these components, it's a lot of investment. And if something turns out to be wrong with the engine, it's not so fast to iterate on this. And maybe the next few engines are scrap metal, as you said.
What do you guys think the likelihood is? Like, I heard a rumor, and it's from Reddit, so I discredit it entirely, but what would be the case? Like, the rumor is that hot fires happened and the engine blew up, so they're not sharing anything. Do you think that would happen? Like what if that were the case? Do you think Rocket Lab would be rushing out to be like, hey, it happened, but it blew up, and like, we learned from it? Or do you think it'd be like, oh shit, get the second one on, let's get a second hot fire and pretend this never happened? What do you guys think would happen in that scenario if it didn't go well?
I think this is my opinion, right? So feel free to formulate your own. They're very upfront about any anomalies or anything that has happened. They're very upfront about, saying, hey, we found some design flaws that we wanted to incorporate into the flight. They didn't state, when they said that they were pushing back, I don't remember if they said this or not. When they were talking about pushing back the Neutron launch, they weren't specific around the engine. or anything like that, but they did state that there were design changes that they wanted to implement before they actually put it up into space. Maybe that was part of the Archimedes. I don't know, but I feel like if the engine blew up, I feel like they would be very transparent and at least say, hey, we'll give you guys an update when we know more. And I think they would probably be obligated from some sort of regulatory body to do the same. Or the regulatory body would have to be informed, as soon as possible. Just like the FAA had to be informed in September 2023 when that anomaly happened. They couldn't get the second stage off, right? So they were able to successfully get the first stage and get it into orbit, but the second stage they had the anomaly where the second stage Rutherford engine wouldn't ignite, right? It had that arcing issue. So they were very upfront in stating that. So that's just my thought, right?
Do you mind if I play devil's advocate and bring in the recovery stuff? And Vince, if we're going to cover this later on, let me know. But it's just to kind of push against the transparency narrative. Is I think I speak for everyone where I say I don't know what's going on with the recoveries anymore, and they keep and like I kind of mentioned up front, like I don't know if it's a miscommunication between management or what, but we went from like 9 recoveries this year to 2 to 1 to maybe 1, and 1 being next year, and then suddenly it's maybe back in this year, and now it's completely off the table. 100% of the teams not working on recovery, and everyone's just kind of left like is it happening or not? Like what's going on? So I mean, what do you like? What's your thoughts on that aspect of it as far as transparency goes?
I thought we have seen a recovery this year. No,
we saw the very first launch of this year was the recovery, but that was the one that came back, and Adam Spice was, boasting, for lack of a better term, about how well it came back, and it's in such great shape, and we're going to get this one going. But first, we're going to do the 9 recovered Archimedes flight first, and that one hasn't been mentioned since. So it's like, are we getting the booster that's now been moved from 2025 back into 2024? And are we also getting that Archimedes, the 9?
Oh, you mean actually flying a recovered booster? You mean
yeah. The story keeps changing with that, and it's like you want to kind of give them that that grace of like maybe they just haven't synced up yet. They're different time zones or whatever, and it's like, do you guys maybe need to like sit down for an hour and go over it and then get on the same page?
I mean,
it's all over the place.
My honest opinion on this is that I don't think that the Electron recovery is that important for the company's overall finances and direction, right? Like, I think that what they would use the Electron recovery for is maybe to learn for Neutron, like how Neutron would, re-enter and how you guide in the re-entry. And I feel that kind of they got that data. And if they need to develop new technology on how to make it reusable, then like money-wise, let's say that they save 10% on the gross margin, right? It's a couple of $100,000 at best that they save, right? Whereas if the same team focuses on Neutron recovery and making sure that one is reusable, then they are saving like almost like $5 to $10 million on Neutron, right? And this is why I give them the benefit of the doubt that management can judge that, like, what is the best use of the manpower and resources of the company and when. And I don't necessarily feel that the Electron recovery is like never happening, but I can see how it's not a priority at this point.
Mm-hmm. And I'm more or less on the same page with you on that. Like, again, the issue is just like to tell us what's going on,
Yeah. And it's funny on the Archimedes engine, it could be as simple as when they're doing the test, like it's like a miscommunication that we don't know, that they're also like iterating whatever they can on the design. So as they're doing the test, it's like they're seeing that, okay, this is not optimal. Okay, let's change that part. Okay, this is not optimal. Let's change that part. And it's just more changes than they thought that would be needed. And the test is coming no matter what. It might be that benign, the whole explanation.
I think if you're really unclear about it, Scotto, I think reaching out to investor relations or even asking on a conference call or figuring out a way to ask on a conference call. I don't think I've ever heard either Adam or Pete shy away from something unless it was confidential for like a NDA sort of reasoning, right? So I personally haven't heard about the booster going up this year at all. I didn't even realize that was a thing. I know they were recovering them, but I didn't realize that they were going to try to actually refurbish and fly a booster this year. I know they're still trying to get a lot of the recovered engines and actually fly a few of those, because I think we've only flown one engine, if I remember correctly, so far, because that's why we had 499 engines at the 50th launch and not 500. They stated that explicitly. So I don't have an answer for you. I just am surprised that I hadn't heard that they were trying to fly a booster this year. So that's news to me. Maybe I need to do a little bit more in-depth research.
Yeah, it was mentioned in February that and this is Adam mentioning this, keep in mind. Adam mentioned in February that the full booster reuse is no longer in focus for 2024. But then it was 3 months later, Peter Beck mentioned on the earnings call that he's talking about that first recovery from this year, the January booster, is been brought into the production fold and is looking to refly later this year. But then there was no mention about the Archimedes, that 9. Maybe they're putting them together at this point. I'm not sure, but hopefully we get some clarity in a little over a month, I guess it would be, on the earnings call.
We'll I'm pretty sure that we're going to get a lot of clarity. And do you guys see this comment? I know people at Rocket Lab, the engine has not blown up. So I guess that's I guess that's the end of that. Yeah, and while we're on this topic, I did a little bit of research. Scotto gave me this idea about how long it takes for other rockets to get developed, how much money it takes. And sometimes because you build up your expectations, you can be very pissed that there was a delay. And I give you an example. I'm a real estate developer, and we early in our company, we were trying to get a building permit, and we were told that it's impossible to get a building permit for this particular project that we have. And then somehow we had a person in the company who likes to push things, and they gave us the internal target to get the building permit in 2 to 3 weeks. And the team was really going for this. And in Sweden, like if you get a building permit in like less than 6 months, it's like a miracle, We managed to get the building permit in 3 months, and then this person was very, very disappointed that we were like 2 months late. But we got a building permit like 3 months faster than average, and it was supposed to be impossible to get a building permit for what we wanted to get a building permit, right? And so I was looking, let me just make sure that I'm sharing the screen. So I wanted to look at like rockets, because to be honest, for some funny reason, I've never done this research of how long other rockets were developed for, and how fast they are. So I'm just gonna, this is a bit nerdy and full of data, but we just run through them. So the Falcon 1 was developed between 2002 to 2008, so 6 years, and the development cost of the rocket was 90 million. And I always count to this on the first successful launch. So the Falcon 9, which was the second rocket for SpaceX, was only 5 years instead of 6, with a development cost of 300 million. And so far, these are very comparable, by the way, to Rocket Lab. Rocket Lab was a little bit faster. I think they were, instead of 6, they were 5 years on the Electron and $100 million, but they also did it a bit later. Then here's a surprising one. Starship was the first development began on it in 2012. That is 12 years ago, if you guys believe that. And we don't know how big the budget is for it, but according to rumors, it's between $5 to $10 billion. So 12 years, and yeah, I guess they have had successful, like they went to orbit. So yeah, whatever. Firefly Alpha is the next one. So it was starting development in 2014, and the first successful flight was 2013, 9 years, and it cost circa 100 million. Then we have the Astra rocket. They, in November 2021, reached orbit first time after 9 years. Then here we have ULA Vulcan. It was announced in 2014. They planned to fly it in 2019, and instead the first flight was 2024, so 10 years after development, and the cost was 4.2 billion. Yeah, and then we have Electron and Neutron, and you can see Electron took 5 years and 100 million. And here's the really weird thing. So Neutron was announced in 2021, and they wanted to fly that thing in 2024. And that is a 3.5 years development time, which is the fastest rocket on all this list. And now we're speaking about 2025. There was an Ars Technica article, which I wanted to also speak about, where Peter Beck even said, it's a rocket program, so maybe it's not even 2025. And here's my controversial opinion. If it's even 2026 or 2027, it's still quite a fast time to develop a rocket. So what do you guys think about this, what I was showing? And yeah, how is Rocket Lab doing on Neutron development? So Matt, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I think all in all, well, in terms of the pace, I did agree. I thought it was ambitious because if you think about it, it was originally supposed to be 2024, and I think that they announced it not even like early 2021. I think it was like mid to late 2021 when they announced the medium launch vehicle, aka Neutron. So it was really fast paced, and so the fact that they're even getting close to 2025 is pretty much a miracle. But it's cool to see the Falcon 1 and the cost that it took actually to kind of get that on the stand and actually launched as well. I think maybe, I don't know this for certain, but I'm curious to see how much inflation has played up impact on this. Not just say specifically all inflation that's kind of like nationwide, but I mean the fact that now you have multiple different contractors also trying to play in this space. You might have small component makers that are basically now able to charge a lot more because the competition is heating up, right?
Yeah.
And so we see that a lot in the oil and gas industry, when people are really trying to drill more wells and, obviously supply and demand plays an effect, and you actually have a lot more increase in costs. So I'm curious to see if that's something similar that's kind of going on, which is driving some of the costs for some of these folks. But I thought it was very interesting, the ULA one that you brought up for Vulcan being 10 years in the making. Pretty crazy. But it's nice to know that we're kind of on pace with how quickly SpaceX can develop some of these rockets, because if we do want to compare capability and expertise, yes, they were able to do it first, right? But at the same time, if we're even able to match that, it just shows that we're in good company in that respect.
And match it 10 years later, like with all the inflation, as you said. So it's pretty. I was also pretty impressed on that. Scotto, any thoughts on this?
I think Matt said it well. One thing that I'll point out is the cost. And yeah, like I know the whole inflation story and whatnot, but originally Neutron was, it was announced as a $200 million spend wallet, however you want to phrase that. And now it's 250 to 300 million. And then more recently, it's been like quoted to be on the high end of that 300 million. Now, this has me wondering how that timeline, or how that's going to play out if we do see that like mid 2025 or maybe even outside of 2025 launch, if that's like they bump it up to 350 million, or like how long that additional R&D and CapEx spend is going to persist into the future. Because as soon as we crest that hill of like most of the infrastructure being built out and whatnot, Rocket Lab's going to, like, the margins are going to be in a very different place. But how long that takes is, like, you know, a different story entirely.
Yeah. I think it's a wise thing to kind of state. And I was also wondering, how much is it actually to get Neutron on the pad, and how much of it is setting up the assembly line, right? And I, you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm trying to understand. So it's like, you might be, I don't want to say compare apples to oranges, because obviously you're still getting a rocket into space, but it did take, let's just say, Falcon 1, 90 million just to get it in line, or online and up in the air. In Electron, they might have said, well, it costs us 100 million to get the whole assembly line put into place, right? It's very different what you're comparing at that point. And so I'm kind of curious exactly what you're stating. I always was hearing the $200 million mark, 4-year time horizon, like, and now we've obviously pushed back that 4-year time horizon, because otherwise we'd be launching a rocket in 6 months. But I've also heard it creep up $50 million here and there. So really good questions.
Yeah, I used to be very concerned about this also, but I feel like Peter Beck has addressed in interviews that they are building the production line up front for the rocket. And he even said, that, I think he said it in our interview, Matt, that he was making this joke with Adam Spice that they raised money to pour concrete and build infrastructure as opposed to like spending the money on a rocket. And I feel that, yes, like there is a risk that the 300, like now when I did this research, right, like I was very surprised about how optimistic the timeline is. And I'm like, okay, we as investors need to think with that, yeah, like it might be 2026, might be 2027, and that's still very fast for the company. And same with the cost of, like, okay, the budget was 300 million, but it might be a higher budget. But because I think that the big cost, as you guys mentioned, is the setting up the infrastructure, the setting up the machines and everything, and the rocket itself. I don't think is such a big cost anymore. So yes, like it will be added cost, but I don't think it will be that the cost will land on 600 million. Like it will be, a few tens of millions more than planned. And okay, that's fine. Like that happens, but it shouldn't be some extreme number.
And as you guys were talking, kind of it reminded me of I found the quote. It's from the Off Nominal podcast. It was like, was that a week ago or 2 weeks ago? Yeah, Peter mentioned that 80% of the work and capital is for infrastructure, so only 20% being the rocket. So I guess, like, even if the rocket is delayed, what is 20% of, we'll call it 300 million? Like that's not, yeah, it's going to be like negligible, maybe like tens of millions more, but it's not going to be like 400 million. Yeah. So that 80% is pretty much spoken for, like probably by the end of the year. I think it's safe to say, right? Like all the infrastructure and whatnot.
Yeah. And it's so interesting also what Matt said, because probably, I don't know if when they made the Falcon 9, because they were trying to close an extra round of funding, right? So most probably the attention was on like making the rocket fly, and it wasn't on having a production line built out. And I think Matt could be very correct on the fact that the 100 million is literally like they just assembled a rocket, and it wasn't, I mean, they also abandoned the Falcon 1. So it must be, as Matt is saying, that it was just they put together a rocket, they flew it, and that was 100 million. Whereas Rocket Lab like built a launch pad in Mahia, they built like factories, all the machines, and that's what was 100 million on the Electron development. And that's like 10 years after the Falcon 1 with all the inflation and everything. So it's very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So let me see what other news there was this week with Rocket Lab. I mean, this is a much smaller update, but it's an update. It's funny. It's the part that is the most income and most revenue for Rocket Lab, the space systems, and it's the least visible part of Rocket Lab. And they had this small update that we've got Mars on our mind this week. The USBSSL team has been in the clean room performing boom deploy tests on the science instruments headed to Mars. on our twin spacecraft Blue and Gold. So my only takeaway from this is that they're moving ahead. Any significance you guys think this has, or anything we should say more about it?
I just want to see New Glenn fly. I hope they're successful. It takes real balls to, I mean, first orbit attempt is going to Mars. Like, okay.
Keep in mind, go ahead, Matt.
I was gonna say, I think a lot of people still think that New Glenn and a lot of these rockets out of Blue Origin are all doing comparable missions to what they're doing at Rocket Lab, and the answer is they're not. They're mostly just getting people just across the line into space, letting them hang out for a couple minutes, and then they float back down to Earth. So it's slightly different what they've been doing over at Blue Origin. So you're right. I think it is pretty aspirational to assume that they're going to go directly to Mars and be able to succeed.
I was going to say, keep in mind that when Musk launched his cherry red Tesla on the Falcon Heavy demo flight, they were supposed to put the car into a Mars orbit. And how many Falcon 9s have the company flown before? And this was the first Falcon Heavy, and they missed the orbit by quite a lot, as far as I understood from the launch. And that was a relatively experienced space company. Like Blue Origin has not even been to orbit yet. They've never flown this vehicle. And I think if you want to bet money, the odds are on that something is going to glitch on this mission.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. Okay, so then the next news is now more space industry news. I want to show you guys one clip, and I wonder what you guys think about this. So this is the Firefly CEO, and this is what he says.
Well, what I would say to every investor is, we have a business plan that will be profitable as well. So we're not a science project. We don't just need unlimited amounts of capital. We'll be cash flow positive by the end of 25, and 2026 will be our first fully cash flow positive and EBITDA positive year. Well, what I would say to every...
So I hope the sound was working. Like, what do you guys think of this statement that Firefly, who is a competitor to Rocket Lab, is somehow going to be cash flow positive with multiple launch vehicles being in development and the cadence not really being up yet?
That whole interview, I feel like I've completely shifted my perspective on Firefly. And
to the good or bad or
bad, like
okay.
So I've watched them for years now, right? Like the changing of CEOs, the changing of legal entities, like the whole thing. Well, I mean, you guys have read the book, right? Like,
yeah,
it's a interesting story, and it's that notion of like rising tide rises all ships. So I'm kind of rooting for Firefly, but like my bullshit-ometer was at an all-time high through that whole interview. Like I mean, this is just one example of many where I'm just like, are you sure? Are you sure that's going to happen that way? And I got Chris Kemp vibes from the guy, you know? Don't feel super,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, Chris Kemp, it's a funny word, but I agree with you there. I mean, I always kind of viewed Firefly as, okay, we're on the back foot, but we are starting to deliver, and we're speaking through our delivery. And I didn't watch the whole interview, so I'll just be transparent with that. But I did see this clip, and I listened to it multiple times, and I was just like, really? I was like, that sounds kind of boastful, right? It does seem like a shift in how Firefly is kind of conducting themselves, as if they're trying to like make sure that, hey, you know, we're doing things too, guys, and you know, we're going to be a company that. And maybe that's just the push for the VCs. You know, maybe the VCs are saying you guys need to be a little bit more markety and things like that. But I felt like out of all the other competitors, Firefly was actually doing rather well. And, you know, they had a rather successful launch. What was that, in October or December of last year? Or maybe it was even more recently than that. So, you know, I was kind of expecting them to do rather well, but to come out, you know, without having a actually fully on track deployment of satellites and everything like that, to immediately come out and say, yeah, by 25, 26, we'll be profitable, kind of seems a little fishy.
Especially with the rumors of them maybe being acquired or IPOing. He even mentions that later in the interview as well. He's like, what does the next 5 years look like? Are we IPO? Are we acquired by somebody else? And then all of the other stuff he was saying, I'm like, oh, I get it. Like, I see what you're doing here. You're in salesman mode here, not engineer mode.
Maybe they will be acquired by Lockheed Martin, and then they will merge the bookkeeping, and then because Lockheed Martin is cash flow positive, they are cash flow. But no, I don't know. It's just but yeah, I mean, there isn't any rocket company yet that is cash flow positive, and they are just at the beginning, and it's like utterly inconceivable for me how they would be cash flow positive, especially because they're, correct me if I'm wrong, they're developing like a moon, like a lunar vehicle, right?
Yeah, launching in November is the first one.
Yeah. And it's like how, and I think that they're also developing a bigger, like a heavy launch vehicle also, or maybe I'm...
It's a joint thing with Northrop Grumman. Their first, like it's one of the stages is Northrop, the other is Firefly to start, and that'll be launching through 2025, and then in 2026 it'll be like the full stack will be Firefly, which is set to retire the, I think it's A330 is the name of the Northrop unit.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, we don't have data on the financing of that, but like a heavy launch vehicle, I mean, we saw on this little research that I did that it's in the billions of dollars. The lunar vehicle, I mean, I don't know, easily in the hundreds of millions. And how the F do you become cash flow positive with these ongoing developments? Like, yeah.
Yeah, and I think even speaking of the lunar vehicle, I mean, part of that, if it does succeed, will be partly due to Rocket Lab as well, right? Because they're designing some of the software that they're going to be using. So, you know, if Firefly succeeds, then Rocket Lab will succeed as well in that particular lens. So I'm hoping that goes through. Who's launching that vehicle, by the way? I don't know.
Which one's that?
Who's launching the Firefly lunar lander? Yeah.
Launching on a Falcon 9.
Falcon, okay.
Yeah, and here's another piece of Firefly news. This was very interesting, maybe only to me, but it looks like I'm gonna be neighbors with them. Look at this video.
Yeah.
So they're coming to Sweden. I checked. Sweden is a big country, not as big as the US, but they're 19 hours drive away from me if I want to go and watch a launch. So when I saw this, my question was, one, why are they doing this? Probably because they're getting a bunch of European launches and it's somehow they feel that Europe is an untapped market. And number two, should Rocket Lab be, you know, looking at acquiring a European launch station so that they can have access to European satellites? And then my third thought was that Europe is very much lagging and they don't have a lot of satellite to launch anyways. But I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on this.
Interesting to see. I do have to point out, because of the CEO bragging about not being a CGI company, it's kind of funny to see them have CGI in their very next ad launching out of this new site. But I mean, cool, best of luck to them. And there was a mention of like another Lockheed Martin, actually I think he said a couple Lockheed Martin sized contracts. For those unfamiliar, it was a 25 launch deal over, what was it, 3 or 4 years or something? The massive contract. And he mentioned that there's a couple of that magnitude coming down the line as well. So maybe one is with some European provider, and maybe the launch site will make sense over time. I'm sure it will.
All right. Matt?
I think it's just interesting. I mean, they don't have as many launches under their belt. So you might be right there, Scotto. I didn't think about that. I mean, yeah, they have to have some sort of reason or push to be able to open that up. Otherwise, it's just a waste of capital. So they have to have some sort of big contract that is going to be unveiled. Otherwise, I feel like it's just way too early in their timeline for that, right? I mean, I can understand why Rocket Lab had, they wanted to open up the door to the DoD. They got their HASTE mission in 2023, and hopefully we'll see some more HASTE missions later this year, if not early next. And obviously they wanted to establish the Neutron launch pad as well in Wallops. So I get why they had it opened up a second one. But I don't know. It just seems strange that even before your fifth launch, you're opening up a second launch site. It's a little.
Well, this is third even now, right? Or second or third, because we have Wallops in the mix too now.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
They almost have as many launch pads as they do launches at this point.
This is all going to help their cash flow positivity. This is how you become
definitely
cash flow positive. Yeah. Okay, so we're all baffled by this. Do you guys think that Europe is like an up and coming space? I don't know literally anything that they're. I know that there's like a few satellites here and there that Europe is launching, but I don't know anything big that is like a Kuiper or Starlink or anything of this size.
I just know there's a lot of red tape.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I mean, I wonder how it is to get a launch license in Sweden. Like I deal a lot with the building permits, and it's horrible, the bureaucracy that is here. Yeah. All right. So let me see if, there's this doozy here. So this week, the environmental agency in Cape Canaveral was doing a survey, and Blue Origin raised a complaint, and they wanted a cap on Starship launches from the Cape. What was your guys' reaction to this? And do you think Blue Origin is such an angel company that they are worried about the environment, or there is potentially an alternative motive behind this decision?
What could that motive be? I don't know what you mean, Vince.
I also don't know.
I think everyone knows what this is. This is just Blue Origin trying to put a leash on SpaceX so they can keep up. I don't know how else to take it. It's not about the environment.
Yeah. Matt?
I don't even know if keep up is even the right term. I think
Or
it's
like
just
catch up, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like billionaires trying to stab other billionaires like through regulatory tape. Yeah, because I mean, New Glenn, who knows it's even going to be successful, right? So it's I guess we'll find out in September, October timeframe. But catch up. I don't know if I understand what you mean, but I don't even know if catch up is even the right term. I mean, they're so far behind. They're not even launching to low Earth orbit yet. So it's Anyway, I think any business is good for space business, but to try to get after your competitor here, I think is kind of a low blow. I think there's a lot of other things that Jeff has in his remit that he can explore by trying to save the environment, right? Next day delivery, things like that he has a lot more control of, rather than really focusing on a rocket company's launch cadence. So it seems like just billionaires going after billionaires.
It's very interesting. This comment says it's about them not having to stop operations at the Cape every time SpaceX launches. Please read it on the stream. It's perfectly reasonable. I read it a little bit. I didn't read it the whole way through, so I encourage everyone to read it and decide for themselves. I think there must be a way that these companies can operate, like coexist at the Cape with each other and still operate. So I'm not sure. Yeah,
I'm also curious what operations they're having to stop exactly.
Yeah, exactly. They're like
They're
not
like
launching
twice a year
anything.
launch. Like,
Yeah. Did you guys see this meme that Francisco posted that the headquarters of different space companies or the mission control of different space companies, and then like, you know, they show the Rocket Lab mission control and then SpaceX mission control, and then Blue Origin was like a courthouse. That
that's appropriate.
that was a very savage meme. Cool. That was all the news that I had for this week. Do you guys like we closed out Q2? Do you guys have any predictions on how Q2 went and what we can expect on earnings?
I'm not. I mean, I'm sure we'll be pretty much right on guidance as far as that goes. Because we didn't end up getting that fifth launch. That was kind of a maybe. So I think it's safe to settle on 105 to 110. I think is what they guided for million. So kind of right in track.
The thing I'm most concerned about, I agree. I don't think that the variance to guidance is going to be very large. I think the thing I'm curious about is working capital, and if we're actually able to realize a lot of that from some of the SDA satellites that we've been, MDA satellites that we've been able to actually push through. Because I know that was a big thing was, you know, you have all this money kind of going out and you're spending and spending and spending. And for a lot of those MDA satellites, you weren't actually able to get capital in the door until delivery. So I'm hoping we saw a little bit of that in 1Q, and I hope that continues to persist in 2Q, and hopefully be able to help what's the word I'm looking for? Arrest some of the speed of which we are in a capital crunch, as you stated well, Scott. I think you're going to continue to have $30 million burn quarters until you get Neutron up into the sky. So, you know, anything to help offset that will be nice and useful. And I also would like to hear a little bit more about, have they narrowed down the potential companies that they are looking to have inorganic growth, and are they actually in negotiations as of yet? And so we should hear something in the coming months, or if they're still on the search. So those two things, coupled with the third, obviously, being the hot fire test. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. I think we're going to have Peter on again after earnings. It sounded like from the Rocket Lab contact person that it's going to be like a regular thing after earnings. They didn't say every quarter, so it might be that, like, yeah. But we might have him on, and then we get to ask him a lot of these cool questions. By the way, here is one in the comments that I actually don't know the answer to. The question is, why is the Cape so important? I.e., why doesn't SpaceX just focus on Starbase? This is a very logical question, because on Starbase, like it's basically SpaceX's private port, and they don't bother anybody. There's like nobody living around there anymore. And the Cape, as far as I understand, is quite like jam-packed basically already. Granted, it's because of SpaceX. But yeah, do you guys know anything about this?
I wonder if it's maybe SpaceX just kind of likes it that way to kind of encumber their opponents.
Yeah, could be. Or maybe there is some key delivery infrastructure to the Cape or something that is like easier than. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Good question.
Cool.
I wanted to ask you guys about something as well, because I was just kind of going over like past conferences and whatnot, and there was that one this past week. Drawing a blank on who hosted, but there was a bunch of space companies. Rocket Lab was supposed to be at this one, and they weren't.
Yeah, the Jeffries is
the one. Yeah, and then I was looking back. You know, on the last slide of each earnings presentation, they'll say we're going to be here, 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 and here. They've I was under the premonition that, or not the. I was under, what's the word I'm looking for?
Impression
that they just didn't post them public, the past couple, but with being able to kind of look in the rearview mirror, it seems like maybe they've canceled them all is what I'm really getting at. Is there any reason that they would do that, or like what's your guys' thoughts on that?
I think only if somebody's sick. But the thing is with this Jeffries, like I tried to access, because there was a couple of interesting companies. I think Redwire was there, ASTS was there, and I wanted to hear them talk. And it wasn't like you could find that they did have the speeches, and then you could like sign in with your name, and then when you clicked like access the thing, it wanted like a username and password, and it was not possible. Like it was super hard to go through. So it could be that it happened. It's just not uploaded anywhere online.
No, it because they were supposed to like I had access to the full thing. It was kind of a complicated onboarding thing, but they were supposed to be there and they just simply weren't. And then same thing we had like through May, June. There's 2 in June, no 3 in June, and Adam was supposed to be at 3 of them, and then another gentleman for this recent Roth one, and they've just all not happened for whatever reason. So it seems like Rocket Lab is pulling out of their conferences.
No. On the, what do you call it? On the one that they presented, let me just get it, because I think I know which one you're speaking about. I have videos on those on the channel, like the ones that are available, and I think some of them are not publicly available. Let me see if I can find it for you.
Like the most recent I have is May 14th, the Bank of America one, and then it seems like he's just MIA since.
I mean, they don't win anything on canceling these, right? So I think that if they, like, I have seen some presentations where Peter Beck did it live or like online because he was like sick and was not able to leave New Zealand. Let me just here, financials, quarterly results. Okay, do you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, it's loading. Okay, so if you guys want to chit chat about something while we find this, that's okay. Scotto, who is your boyfriend who is in the comments? Like I every time I block him and he just keeps coming back.
I don't know. I think he's from Discord. I think I know who it might be, and they're a shyster.
But is he like just a troll, or he's legitimately in love with you and it's Pride Month and he felt like he needed to?
I don't know. Really don't know.
Okay, it's quite funny that this exists. Okay, this is the one that you meant, right?
Yeah, that's the one. So we had Bank of America, but then it seems like the other 4 were.
Yeah, this Key Bank, it was like not online. Like I saw, like I found that it happened and they spoke, but it was just not uploaded online. And then I think this Stifle I have on my channel, and I think this Wells Fargo, I try to find this one, but I think it's again not uploaded online. It's somehow like an in-person one.
But you know what happened for sure though?
Oh, because when I was looking for it, I looked everywhere, and like I found somehow like the schedule, and you know that it was saying that it's happening, and then when you try to register, like you had to email a person at Wells Fargo, and then it looked like you had to get the physical like access, like it wasn't an online event.
Okay.
I tried to
sorry, go ahead.
No, I really try to put these on my channel because they give really interesting insights into the company. But yeah, unfortunately, they're not always available.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's like maybe like if they did get canceled, if there's just maybe like some sort of NDA or some reason that Adam wouldn't show up. I don't know. Just seems odd. like I said, it just seems like there's some things going on behind the scenes that I'm sure we'll know about in due time.
Yes. Hopefully earnings is not as far out as it usually is. So maybe it's in 5-6 weeks we get our update. Cool. Well, I don't have any more to say this week. Do you guys have any closing thoughts?
Other than the 98 people watching, please be sure to subscribe to all three of us and follow us on X so we can continue to give you guys great content. And Vince, as always, thank you for inviting me on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for coming, you guys. Cool. Goodbye, everyone. See you next week. And hopefully Rocket Lab will be over 5.
Cheers all.
Yeah, ciao.